The cafeteria on the space station was always busy. Alien voices filled the air, sometimes soft, sometimes loud. The smell of strange foods, some sweet, some sour, mixed with the hum of machines. Floating trays hovered above tables, guided by invisible magnetic fields. Everyone moved quickly, laughing, talking, eating, and sometimes bumping into each other. But in the middle of all this life, one figure remained apart. She sat at the far end of the cafeteria every day. Small and quiet, with soft blue skin that seemed to glow slightly under the lights, and silver eyes that reflected the moving trays and the stars outside the large windows. Her hair was long, white like frost, and moved slightly even though there was no wind. She never spoke. She never waved or smiled. She just sat and ate quietly, picking at her food with careful hands. Sometimes she stared at the stars outside. Sometimes she stared at nothing at all. The other aliens noticed her. Some whispered behind her back. "Why does she always sit alone?" they said. "Does she even eat real food?" Others avoided her completely. Some were afraid of her, though no one really knew why. Children sometimes giggled at the way her silver eyes followed them as they passed, and even adults kept their distance. It was not just that she looked different. There was something in her presence that made others uncomfortable, though no one could say exactly what. The humans on the station were different. Most of them were busy with experiments, fixing machines, or organizing shipments. They rarely paid attention to anyone else in the cafeteria. But one human boy noticed her. His name was Jax. He was small for his age, with messy brown hair that fell into his eyes and always a backpack slung over one shoulder. Inside the backpack he kept tools, snacks, and small objects he liked to tinker with. Jax had seen the alien girl several times. He didn't know her name. No one called her anything. He didn't know why she sat alone. Every day he watched her quietly, pretending to focus on his food or his work. But he felt a strange pull. There was something in the way she moved her hands over her tray, or the way her silver eyes looked out the window, that made him curious. She seemed lonely. And humans, he thought, could not let loneliness go unnoticed. At first he thought about just waving. Maybe saying hello from a distance. But the cafeteria was loud, and waving might seem strange or scary. He thought about bringing some food, maybe something she liked. But he didn't know what she liked, and what if she didn't want it? Jax had a lot of questions and very few answers. But something inside him told him he had to do it. He had to try. One morning he gathered his courage. He picked up a slice of pizza from his tray. It was warm with melted cheese and a crispy crust. He had been saving it because it was his favorite, but now it seemed more important than his own snack. Slowly he walked toward the far end of the cafeteria where the alien girl sat. He could feel his heart beating fast, and he worried he might trip over a floating tray or bump into someone. She noticed him approaching, though her eyes did not move much. She continued to eat slowly, picking at her food. The other aliens nearby shifted uncomfortably, sensing that something unusual was happening. The whispers died down, and a strange silence fell over that corner of the cafeteria. Jax stopped a few steps away. He took a deep breath. Hi, he said, his voice a little shaky. The alien girl lifted her silver eyes and looked directly at him. She didn't speak, didn't move her tray, didn't smile. But she looked. That was enough for Jax. He held out the slice of pizza. "Do you like pizza?" he asked. The question sounded simple, even silly, but in the quiet space between them, it felt important. For a moment nothing happened. The alien girl's eyes widened slightly. Her small hands trembled, and she looked down at her tray. She had never been asked a question like that before. Never. No one had ever tried to be friendly in this way. No one had ever offered her food just for her. She felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Jax's heart lifted. He sat down on the bench beside her, careful not to get too close. "I'll save you a slice," he said, breaking his own nervousness with a small laugh. He tore off a piece of pizza and held it toward her. She hesitated, then took it carefully. The warmth of the food seemed to spread into her hands, and she finally lifted her eyes to meet his again. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt seen. Not just noticed. Not just stared at. Seen. And for Jax, he realized how simple it could be to make a difference. One small act, one question, one slice of pizza, it could change a day, maybe even a life. Other aliens in the cafeteria started to glance at them, but Jax didn't care. He focused only on her. And for her part, the alien girl, whose name he would learn soon, felt a small spark of hope that she had not felt in a long time. She did not smile fully, but the tension in her shoulders relaxed. She did not speak, but she leaned slightly closer, curious. The space station continued its hum, the floating trays drifted past, and the other aliens whispered. But at the far end of the cafeteria, something simple and important had begun. A human had reached out. A human had asked a question. And for the lonely alien girl, the universe had just felt a little smaller, a little warmer, and a little less lonely. After that first slice of pizza, the cafeteria felt different. It was still full of noise, of floating trays, and of alien voices, but at the far end, near the large window, a small bubble of quiet seemed to exist. Jax and the alien girl sat side by side. He could see her silver eyes glinting under the soft lights. They were filled with curiosity and something new, cautious trust. Jax had not expected her to actually nod at his question. He had worried she might ignore him or worse move away. But she had stayed. And that gave him courage. "I'm Jax," he said, reaching out with his hand. "What's your name?" The alien girl looked at his hand for a moment, then slowly placed hers on top. Her fingers were cool and soft. "Leora," she said quietly, her voice almost like a whisper, a sound unfamiliar to human ears. Jax smiled. "You like the name?" It sounded soft and gentle, just like her movements. Leora studied him with her wide silver eyes. "Do you always share food?" she asked, her accent strange but the meaning clear. Jax laughed softly. "Not always," he said. "But sometimes, when someone looks lonely, I try." He paused. "I noticed you. You looked lonely." Leora's eyes flickered down to her tray. She felt embarrassed, though she didn't know why. No one had ever noticed her like this. People stared, sometimes laughed, sometimes whispered. But this human, this small, messy-haired human, he had seen her. And he had come over. The floating trays moved past them, carrying food that smelled sweet, sour, or spicy. Around them, the cafeteria continued its usual chaos, but Leora hardly noticed. Her attention was fixed on Jax and the strange warmth in his eyes. "You like pizza?" she asked, curious. Jax nodded. "Yeah, it's my favorite. I've tried other foods, but nothing tastes like pizza. Do you want some more?" He tore off another piece from his slice. "You can try it. It's really good." Leora hesitated. She had eaten many foods on the station, from algae-based paste to floating protein spheres, but pizza was new. The smell made her stomach rumble. Slowly she reached for the piece he offered. As she bit into it, her silver eyes widened. It was warm, soft, and salty in a way that felt familiar even though she had never tasted it before. "This is good," she said, and for the first time Jax heard a small smile in her voice. "I'm glad you like it," Jax said. "It's one of my favorites. You can have the rest if you want." Leora looked at him carefully. She was unsure if she should accept kindness so freely. No one had ever done this without wanting something in return. But Jax's face was open and honest, without fear, without judgment. Slowly she nodded and took the remaining pieces. They ate in silence for a few moments, the strange connection between them growing. It was simple. No words were needed. Sharing food, a human boy and a lonely alien girl sitting together at the far end of the busy cafeteria. The act was small, but it felt important, almost magical. "Do humans eat like this often?" Leora asked, glancing at his tray. Jax laughed softly. "Sometimes. We share food with friends. Or with people we want to be friends with." He paused. "I thought maybe you'd like that." Leora's shoulders relaxed slightly. She felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the pizza. It was strange, this human's presence. It was safe, comforting, and even exciting. She had lived on the station for a long time, but never felt anything like this. "Friends?" she repeated slowly, testing the word on her tongue. I want to be friends." Jax smiled widely. "Good. I'm happy about that. We can be friends." Around them, other aliens whispered and stared, but Leora didn't care. For the first time she realized she didn't have to. She had someone who saw her, who reached out, who cared enough to ask one simple question. "Do you like pizza?" After a while, Jax pointed to a tray hovering nearby. "Do you want to try other foods? There's lots to choose from. Some are weird, some are amazing. I can help you." Leora tilted her head, considering. She had been cautious before, afraid to try new things. But now, with Jax beside her, she felt curious. Slowly she nodded. "Okay, I trust you." And so, the quiet began to change. Jax introduced her to small things. The taste of a crunchy green sphere, the sweetness of glowing fruit, the smell of fried protein slices. Leora laughed quietly at the textures and flavors. The silver in her eyes seemed brighter, almost sparkling. For the first time she was learning to enjoy the station, not just endure it. "I never had fun like this before," Leora admitted quietly. Jax shrugged, smiling. "Sometimes fun is small. Like pizza. We're trying something new. We're talking to someone who cares. Leora looked at him, understanding for the first time that humans were not only brave in exploration and battle but also brave in kindness. They could see lonely beings and reach out. They could create warmth in a cold, noisy space station. The cafeteria lights reflected off her blue skin, and for the first time she felt lighter, less alone. Sharing pizza had been simple, but it had changed something inside her. She felt seen. She felt heard. And most of all, she felt hope. Jax glanced at her, noticing the slight curve of her lips in a quiet smile. "You like it?" he asked softly. Leora nodded. "Yes. Thank you," she said. And this time the words carried something more. Trust, gratitude, and the start of a small friendship that could change everything. In the middle of the busy cafeteria, surrounded by noise and chaos, two beings from completely different worlds had connected. One question. One slice of pizza. One human who cared enough to notice. And for Leora, that was the start of something she had never dared to imagine, a chance to belong. After that first shared slice of pizza, Leora and Jax began to meet more often at the far end of the cafeteria. Every day he would sit down with a tray of food, sometimes pizza, sometimes other things he thought she might like. Leora would be there waiting, her silver eyes bright and alert, and a small quiet smile beginning to appear on her face. It was not just about the food. The meals became a small ritual, a way for them to talk and learn about each other. Leora had lived on the station for many years, but she had never spoken so openly with anyone. Her life had been mostly quiet, filled with routines and avoidance. She had been careful not to stand out, careful not to draw attention, careful not to trust anyone. But Jax was different. He did not rush her or demand anything. He asked simple questions and shared small stories. "Do humans always eat like this?" Leora asked one day, pointing at a tray of floating cubes with colorful fillings. "Not always," Jax replied with a grin. "Sometimes we eat quickly. Sometimes we eat with friends. But I like to share when I can. It makes things better." Leora tilted her head. "Friends, is that important?" Jax nodded. "Yes. Friends make life easier. They make you feel safe. And they make things fun." Leora considered this. She had never had a friend in the way he described. The other aliens at the station had been distant, sometimes hostile, sometimes ignoring her completely. She had learned to rely only on herself. But Jax made her feel something new, a small trust, a quiet happiness she could not explain. Over the next days their friendship grew quietly but steadily. Jax introduced her to small games he liked, like tossing small magnetic spheres across the table to see who could catch them. Leora was careful at first, letting the spheres drop, laughing softly when she missed. Soon she was catching them with speed and skill, her laughter ringing quietly in the cafeteria. The other aliens turned their heads, watching the strange human-alien pair, but no one dared interrupt. Sometimes Jax would tell simple stories about Earth. "Back on Earth we have parks. Big green parks with grass and trees. And sometimes we have festivals with lights and music and food everywhere." Leora listened intently. She had never left the station, never seen Earth, never imagined colors like green and smells like fresh flowers. "It sounds nice," she said softly. "It is," Jax said, smiling. "One day maybe I can show you some pictures." They shared laughter and small jokes. Jax's sense of humor was strange to Leora at first. Humans laughed at things she didn't understand, and she would tilt her head, blinking her silver eyes in confusion. But soon she started to see the humor and she laughed too. It was a light, quiet laugh like a small bell, but it filled something empty inside her. The cafeteria, once a place of loneliness and whispers, became their space. They did not care about the staring eyes or the quiet judgments. Here they could be themselves. Here Leora could eat freely, laugh quietly, and talk about things she had never shared. And Jax could see the world through new eyes, learning the tastes, sounds, and small joys of a being completely different from himself. One day Jax brought a strange green snack shaped like a star. "This is called Zork fruit," he said, holding it out. "I've never eaten it before, but someone said it tastes like sunlight." Leora looked at it cautiously. She held it, turned it in her hand, and sniffed it. The smell was sharp, almost sour, but not unpleasant. She bit carefully, her silver eyes widening at the flavor. "It tastes funny," she said, laughing softly. "But I like it." Jax laughed too. "Funny is good. It means it's different. And different is interesting." With each day they learned more about each other. Leora learned that humans could be patient, kind, and brave in small ways. Jax learned that aliens could be clever, thoughtful, and cautious, even if they seemed cold at first. They began to share stories of their lives, Not the large events of battle or duty, but the small moments. A favorite color, a memory of a quiet star, a simple dream for the future. Sometimes, other aliens came near, curious about the friendship. Some whispered questions. Why does he talk to her? She looked strange. But Leora did not feel fear anymore. She had Jax beside her. His presence, his voice, and his laughter were shields against the loneliness that had weighed on her for so long. Jax noticed the change in her too. Her shoulders were straighter, her movements less hesitant. Her silver eyes glimmered in the light, and her quiet smile had become stronger, more confident. For him it was proof that even small acts, one question, one shared snack, one moment of attention, could make a difference. By the end of the week, Leora and Jax's friendship had grown beyond the cafeteria. They started to explore other parts of the station together during free time. Small corridors, storage rooms, even the observation deck where the stars stretched endlessly. Each place was new for Leora, but with Jax by her side, she felt brave enough to explore, to see, to wonder. And always at the end of the day they returned to the cafeteria. A slice of pizza, a shared laugh, a quiet conversation, and a small look at the stars outside. That routine, simple and steady, built something larger. Trust, friendship, and hope. Leora had once thought she would be alone forever. The other aliens had made sure of that. But now she knew differently. One human boy with messy hair, a backpack, and a slice of pizza had shown her that friendship was possible. And for the first time she believed it. In the quiet corner of the busy cafeteria, surrounded by chaos and noise, a simple truth had taken root. Being seen, being cared for, being understood, it could change everything. And for Leora, that simple friendship was the beginning of a new life, one that she could finally face without fear. The space station usually moved at a slow, steady rhythm, but one day that rhythm broke. The alarms started ringing, red lights flashing across the metallic walls. A loud voice echoed through the corridors, announcing an incoming asteroid field. Every resident of the station had to follow emergency protocols immediately. Panic spread quickly. Aliens and humans alike rushed through the hallways, shouting instructions, helping others, and securing equipment. Leora froze in place. The noise, the flashing lights, and the sudden chaos made her body tense. Her silver eyes widened, reflecting the red warning lights. She had been trained for emergencies in theory, but in practice she had never faced anything like this. Her small frame shook slightly, and she felt fear rise like a wave threatening to overwhelm her. Jax noticed her immediately. He had been securing supplies for the emergency, but the moment he saw Leora standing frozen near the cafeteria entrance, he ran to her side. "Leora," he shouted over the alarm. "Come on, we have to move." Leora's first instinct was to step back. She had been taught to follow instructions alone, to rely only on herself. But the thought of navigating this chaos without guidance terrified her. She looked at Jax, saw the determination in his brown eyes, and something inside her shifted. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she reached out her hand. "Grab my hand," Jax said firmly, and she did. His grip was warm and steady. He guided her through the crowded corridors, past floating trays, maintenance bots, and panicked aliens. Every step felt uncertain, but with Jax beside her, she felt slightly braver. She began to notice small things, the way he adjusted his pace to match hers, the way he kept his voice calm despite the chaos. They reached a narrow hallway that led to the control room. The corridor was jammed with others trying to reach safety, and Leora felt herself being pushed from all sides. She stumbled, almost falling, but Jax caught her quickly. "Stay close. Don't let go," he shouted. She clutched his hand tightly, following him as he guided them forward. As they moved, some aliens whispered, watching them curiously. Others ran past in panic. Leora realized something important. Humans were not only brave in exploration and invention, but they could also be brave in the face of danger. Jax was not acting recklessly. He was calm, aware, and ready to protect her. And for the first time she felt safe even in the middle of a crisis. They arrived at a small observation platform overlooking the station's outer hull. The asteroid field was approaching fast. Rocks of all sizes tumbled through space, glinting in the station's lights. The sight was terrifying but also strangely beautiful. Leora felt a mix of fear and awe. She had never seen anything like it before. "Okay, we need to activate the emergency shields," Jax said. "Help me with these controls." Leora nodded, stepping forward. Her hands hovered over the alien-designed panel. She was nervous. What if she pressed the wrong button? What if they failed? But Jax guided her patiently, placing his hand over hers to show the right sequence. Together they pressed the buttons one by one. The station shuddered slightly as the shields powered up, creating a protective barrier around the hull. The asteroid field slammed against the shields. Rocks bounced and shattered against the energy barrier, sending sparks of light through the observation window. Leora gasped, clutching Jax's arm. It worked, she whispered, amazed. Yes, Jax said, smiling briefly. We did it. Together. For a moment, the chaos outside seemed distant. Leora realized she had survived her first real emergency, not alone, but with a human who had cared enough to stay by her side. She had felt fear, but she had also felt courage. Courage born not from her own strength alone, but from trust and friendship. The rest of the station began to calm as the shields held strong. Aliens and humans worked together, securing debris and repairing minor damages. Leora and Jax stayed on the platform a moment longer, catching their breath and watching the stars. The asteroid field had passed, leaving the station safe but changed. Leora looked at Jax. Thank you, she said softly. I was afraid. But you helped me. Jax shook his head. No, you helped yourself. I just stayed with you. You were brave. You didn't run. You followed through even when it was scary. She blinked. For the first time she saw herself differently. She had faced something she thought she could not survive. She had been scared, yes, but she had also acted, she had trusted, and she had learned that being brave was not about never being afraid. It was about acting despite fear and sometimes doing it with someone who cares. The other aliens began to notice the change too. Some whispered admiration. Some who had avoided her before now nodded respectfully as they passed. Leora realized that the fear and distance others had created were no longer her concern. She had someone who saw her value, and that was enough. That evening, back in the cafeteria, the normal noise returned. Floating trays drifted past, aliens chattered, and the hum of the station settled into its familiar rhythm. But for Leora the world had shifted. She sat at the same far end, but this time Jax came to her with a small piece of pizza and a quiet grin. You survived your first asteroid field, he said, handing it to her. I think you deserve a reward. Leora laughed softly. It tastes better than usual, she said, taking the slice. Jax shrugged. Good. You earned it. And don't worry, there will be many more adventures. But we'll face them together. For Leora this was more than pizza or even survival. It was proof that humans could be allies, friends, and protectors. That fear could be met with trust. That loneliness could end with someone simply caring enough to reach out. And in the quiet corner of the bustling cafeteria, under the hum of the space station, two friends, one human, one alien, smiled quietly at each other, ready to face whatever the galaxy might throw at them next. After the asteroid field passed, life on the space station slowly returned to its normal rhythm. The alarms were silenced, the red lights faded, and the busy hum of activity filled the corridors again. Aliens and humans moved through the halls, talking, working, and repairing small damages. But for Leora and Jax, something had changed. The cafeteria, which had once felt lonely and cold, now felt different. Leora still sat at the far end, but this time she did not sit alone. Jax came every day, a small tray in his hand, sometimes with pizza, sometimes with other foods he had discovered for her. He had learned what she liked and what made her smile. And slowly, some of the other aliens began to notice their friendship. At first, a few curious aliens hovered nearby, watching from a distance. Some whispered questions. Why does he sit with her? Is she allowed to eat here? But no one interrupted. They were beginning to understand that this small human and this small blue alien had created something new. A bond that did not need permission, a friendship that was stronger than fear. One afternoon, Leora took a deep breath and smiled at Jax. I like this, she said quietly. Being with you. Jax smiled back. Me too, he said. It's better than sitting alone. Better than doing anything alone. Friends make things better. Leora nodded. She had never felt this before. The loneliness that had been part of her life for so long seemed to lift, replaced with something warmer. She had learned that friendship could be simple, a shared meal, a laugh, a quiet conversation, but it could also be powerful. It could change how she saw herself in the world. They began to explore the station together more often. During free time, Jax would show her places she had never been. The observation deck, with its endless view of stars and planets, became one of her favorite spots. She loved to watch the glowing lights of distant worlds, the tiny movement of ships far away, and the hum of the station as it orbited a distant star. Jax would tell her stories about Earth and other planets he had read about. Leora listened with wide silver eyes, learning new things every day. Sometimes they would laugh together at small mistakes or accidents. A floating tray would bump into the wall, spilling food everywhere, and they would laugh quietly as they helped clean it up. Other aliens sometimes joined them, curious about the friendship. Slowly, Leora realized that she was no longer invisible. People noticed her not because they were afraid or judgmental, but because they wanted to understand. One day Jax brought a small holographic device. "Look," he said, showing her a rotating image of a green forest on Earth. "This is a park. Lots of trees, grass, animals. People go there to relax." Leora's silver eyes widened. "It looks peaceful," she said. "I never imagined this." "It is," Jax said. "One day maybe you can see it for real. But for now you can imagine it." Leora smiled, the small curve of her lips brighter than before. For the first time she realized that the galaxy was not only a place of duty, rules, and isolation. It could also be a place of wonder, laughter, and friendship. And humans, she thought, were capable of both bravery and kindness in equal measure. As weeks passed, Leora and Jax's friendship grew stronger. They shared meals, stories, jokes, and quiet moments gazing at the stars. Leora's confidence increased, and she started to interact more with other aliens. Some who had ignored her before now came to say hello, inspired by the simple courage she had shown during the emergency. She had learned that even small acts of kindness and courage could ripple through others, changing how they thought and acted. One evening, as the station lights dimmed for rest, Leora and Jax sat near the large observation window. They shared a small tray of pizza, the soft glow of distant stars reflecting on their faces. "I never thought I would feel like this," Leora said softly. "Safe, happy, part of something." Jax smiled. "You are. And you deserve it. You're brave, smart, and kind. The galaxy is better with you in it." Leora looked at him, her silver eyes shimmering. She realized that the galaxy was vast and full of dangers, unknown planets, and strange beings. But she also realized something more important. Even in the vastness, connection mattered. Trust, kindness, and friendship could turn fear into courage, loneliness into joy. For Leora, the small acts of sharing food and speaking a simple question, "Do you like pizza?" had changed her life. They had opened the door to trust, friendship, and hope. And with Jax beside her, she felt ready to face anything. The other aliens in the cafeteria watched quietly, slowly understanding that humans and aliens could bridge differences. It was not about power, fear, or status. It was about seeing each other, caring, and acting with kindness. Leora had shown that even a small being, overlooked and ignored, could change the world around her just by letting someone care. As the station continued to hum with life, Leora took a deep breath. She felt warmth in her chest, not from food or light, but from something stronger, friendship. The galaxy was vast and life could be unpredictable. But she knew now that she was not alone. One human, one simple act had made all the difference. She looked at Jax and he smiled back. Together they watched the stars, eating their pizza, talking quietly, and dreaming of new adventures. The cafeteria, once a place of silence and loneliness, had become a place of hope. And for Leora, the galaxy had become a place she could finally call home.